All right, shalom to the elect of Israel. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakakwadash. And what I said was all the praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, who is the Heavenly Father, whom the world ignorantly calls God, in the name of his Son, Yahweh Shai, who is the Messiah, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus, in the name of the Holy Spirit, which in Hebrew is Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone Everywell. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect of Israel. This is another Milk Series lesson, and it's going into the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream that was explained by the prophet Daniel in the Hebrew, whose name is Danya Allah. All right? Now, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had and seen this statue represented something. And it represented basically four or five kingdoms that would be on the earth before the kingdom of heaven. All right? And we're living in the last of it. Okay? We're living in the very last kingdom that is set up to rule on the earth. All right? We're living in the time of the last one. So, so it gives it's like a timeline, you could say, almost say, all right, to go by, right? And this even throughout the scriptures, right? Because in the Bible it talks about the Babylonians, and after them, the different empires like the Israel had to go through and everything. All right, so just gonna go through it here real quick. Okay, so this is the picture here. All right, the brothers put together. You have the gold, silver, the brass, and on the right hand it shows you who the empires are. Okay, so you got the gold, silver, brass, iron, and clay. Okay, so as we're gonna read in this chapter, all right. It talks about, the various empires that would come after each other, all right? That would come after the previous one, all right? All the way, four or five major ones, I'm going to say, before the kingdom of heaven, a.k.a. the throne of David comes, all right? Bear with me 1 second. Just got to get some water here. Lock in. Now, let's go ahead and go to the book of Daniel, 2nd chapter, as it says, the king's forgotten dream. Now, it says, and in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. So the king Nebuchadnezzar, right, who was the king of what is historically known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire, right? He's the one that came and took the southern kingdom, or the Jews, the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and carried them away into Babylon, all right? So during this time that he was reigning in the Babylonian Empire, it says in the 2nd year of his reign, all right, the Most High gave Nebuchadnezzar this dream, right? And it said he was troubled, all right? He broke out of sleep from this dream. Verse 2, it says, Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. So he wanted to call all these different types of people to explain his dream and what it meant. And they came and stood before him. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king of Syria, O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. So now they're telling the king to tell them what the dream is, and they want to show him what it means. Verse 5, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me, If ye will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, ye shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if ye show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. All right. So this, right, he's basically letting them know, what's going to happen to them if they do or don't show him the meaning of the dream. Right. Verse 7, they answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation of it. The king answered and said, I know of certainty that ye would gain the time, because ye see the thing is gone from me. All right, and let me see. This says another translation. NLT says, the king replied, I know what you are doing. You're stalling for time because you know I am serious when I say about the dream. All right, verse 9 says, but if ye will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For ye have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that ye can show me the interpretation thereof. So ultimately, King Nebuchadnezzar, he had his dream and he wants to know what it means. That's what interpretation means. To explain what it means. Basically, that's what interpretation means. Verse 10, the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things at any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requireth, and there is none other that can show it before the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Right? Verse 13, and the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. See? Verse 14, then Daniel, this is the prophet, Salakia, then Daniel answered with counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? And Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. Then Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. These are Israelites. Verse 18, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Okay, so they are. So ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. He was given a dream by the Most High, right? And the prophet Daniel, okay, he wanted to know the dream, right? Basically, he let me just say, he was going to try to interpret it, but he basically wanted the Most High to reveal it to him. Let me get this verse in another translation. In NLT it says, where is it? NLT says, he urged them to ask the God of heaven to show them his mercy by telling them the secret, so they would not be executed along with the other wise men of Babylon. Okay? Now, I'm not gonna read all the way down, but I'm just skip verse 19. It says, then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So the Lord revealed the secret to Daniel. All right? Because in the scriptures, what? We know that everything comes from Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai. So verse 20 says, Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God blessed be the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. All right. So the Lord is the one that knows all secrets and has all wisdom. He's the one that wisdom comes from. It tells you that in Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach, the first chapter. All right. But the Lord made it known to Daniel, and Daniel began to praise him. So now let's jump down. So this is the king's dream. I'm going to start at all right, let me jump down to verse 25. It says, Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said thus unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. All right, so talking about Daniel. He's going to explain it to the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? Are you going to tell me what it means? Verse 27, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, because this dream happened while he was sleeping. Because what shall come to pass hereafter? Because as you're going to find out, right, in the dream, it goes into what's going to happen after, after the Babylonian Empire and everything. It says, what shall come to pass hereafter? And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. Verse 30, But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. So now let's get into it. And heart in the Hebrew is lab, which means mind. So now let's get into it. All right. The king's dream, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. All right. It says, down 2 and 31, Thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image. This great image was whose brightness was excellent still before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. Now let's look at this word image here. All right, a great image, great in the Hebrew. Here it says Shagya'ah or Shagaya'ah, however you say it. It says great, much, exceedingly. All right, so now let's look up the word image, Tazalum. It says image, idol. All right, it's like like a statue type of thing. All right. So when Nebuchadnezzar saw it in his dream, something like we pulled up here. Okay. So it says this image's head was of. So Daniel begins to describe it. Right now he says this image's head was of fine gold, his breasts and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Right? So Daniel begins to describe what he saw, what Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream, okay, which was what? A head that was of gold, all right? It was breasts and arms of silver, right? Then his belly and his thighs of brass, the legs of iron and his feet, partly iron and partly clay. All right. And as you can see here, that's an illustration of it. Okay. And these all represent kingdoms. Okay. That will come after one another, basically. All right. But we're going to get into it. So, but that wasn't all that Nebuchadnezzar saw in the dream. Verse 34. And this all meant something. It says, Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. All right, so Nebuchadnezzar in his dream, he saw the statue, you know, gold, it was gold, silver, brass, iron, part clay and iron, right? Then he saw a stone that smote the image on his feet, right? And after it smote it, the image, you know, everything just came crashing down. And this same stone became it says a great mountain and filled the whole earth. All right, and a mountain, all right, you should know, means government. Okay. Then this all meant something that Nebuchadnezzar saw in the dream. This actually happened. Nebuchadnezzar, a couple thousand, you know, some thousands of years ago, during this time, had this dream. Okay. And Daniel, the prophet, came and told him what it meant. All right. And I might come back up here. Okay. But now it says the interpretation. Babylon, the first kingdom. So verse 36. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. So Daniel is now speaking to Nebuchadnezzar. And he says, you're a king of kings. And a king of kings is a title, you know, basically showing that you're like a supreme king, you know, like you're a king over other kings. You know, he's telling Nebuchadnezzar that's what he was. You know, he's a king over other rulers and empires and things like that. It says, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength and glory. Because the Most High gave him, you know, as it says, a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. Okay? He gave him that entire empire he had. And it shows that it all comes from the Lord. And this is a cut to Esau, you know, because these devils, they think that they got their rulership off of their own strength, which they didn't. It was given to them of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Verse 38 says, and wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So ultimately, he's, you know, telling him his empire is vast, but as it says, thou art this head of gold. Okay. This lets you know that in this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had when he saw this statue and it had a gold head, right? That gold head represented the Babylonian Empire. Okay. As it says here, 605 to 539 BC. All right. Also known as the lion. Now, continuing on, verse 39. And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. So you see, this statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, it represented kingdoms arising after another. Okay? So we just saw Babylon up here, right? Now, this is the Neo-Babylonian Empire, okay, at its greatest extent. This is its territory that it had, all right? So we go back, right? After the Babylonian Empire, what came up? It says, and after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. Okay, so after the Babylonian Empire, what came up? I typed in what empire rose after the Neo-Babylonian Empire. It says the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire, right? This is also known as the Medo-Persian Empire. It says arose after the Neo-Babylonian Empire, conquering Babylon in 539 BCE. This event, led by Cyrus the Great, marked the end of the Neo-Babylonian dynasty and the beginning of Persian dominance in the region. See, this goes to show you also that the Bible is not fake, because it also covers history, okay? And this was prophesied to happen by the prophet Daniel, okay? And it says, and another, oh, by the way, you know, the Medo-Persian Empire's territory, okay? As you see, they had a very vast empire as well, all right? So then after that, it says, and another third kingdom. So, Slakia, don't forget to move it. So after the Babylonian Empire, which was that head of gold, came the Medo Empire, which was that, you know, chest and arms of silver. Okay. That was the Medo-Persian Empire from 539 to 331 BC. The bear, you know, this has Cyrus the Great, you know, Daniel the prophet in it. Darius. Okay. This is literal documented history. All right. So moving on. All right. It says, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. Now, this kingdom here is talking about, because who came after them? The Greek Empire. Okay. I typed in on Google, what empire came after the Medo-Persian Empire? The Macedonian Empire, led by Alexander the Great, who was an Edomite. It says came after the Medo-Persian Empire. Alexander conquered the Persians and established the Macedonian Empire, which then gave way to the Roman Empire. So after the Medo-Persian Empire, also called the Achaemenid Empire, or the First Persian Empire, right, came the Greek Empire. Okay, and the thing is, when we read in the Bible, the Bible gives accounts of things that happen, with dealing with Israel throughout these different empires. All right. And for example, the Babylonian Empire, you had prophets prophesying about it, throughout it. And after that, the Medo-Persian Empire, when Jake was allowed to go back to Israel and rebuild the temple. Okay, then after that, you have the Greek Empire, which began the Hellenization of the Israelites, right? Because after Alexander the Great, okay, you had that whole history, okay, with him, his four generals and one of their descendants, Antiochus Epiphanes the Fourth, all right, Hellenizing Israel, okay, Hellenizing meaning adopting Greek culture, okay, in the Greek Empire, that was the first. That was when the so-called white man, right, the Edomites, that's when the first time they came into power, right? That was the beginning of their rule in the earth, was the Greek Empire. That's why they tell you society started with, or civilization started with the Greeks. Wrong. It started way before that, okay? But, this vision that this dream Nebuchadnezzar had that Daniel is explaining, okay? This, you can track, Israel, because Israel had to go through these different, captivities and, be under these different kingdoms throughout the scriptures, all right? We had to go through these things. So the one after the Medo-Persian Empire, the thighs of brass, is talking about the Greek Empire, right? And the Greek Empire's territory, right, as you see, Alexander the Great, was that, all right? Was that. And this period saw Hellenization, right? This is the history, and that leads into the Greeks in the New Testament. You hear about the Greeks being preached the word and believing, in the New Testament, right, which are Israelites, okay. And why were they called Greeks? Because it goes back to this history right here. Israel was Hellenized Jews. Hellenized Jews were Jews of Jewish heritage who adopted aspects of Greek culture and language. See? A phenomenon that began with Alexander the Great's conquests in the 4th century BCE. That's all I'm going to read. Okay? So we hear about Greeks in the New Testament that's being preached to. It's talking about Israelites that adopted Greek customs and culture and everything like that. Okay? And where did that history come from? Back to when the Greek Empire began coming on the scene. So you see how all of this links up, okay, with this dream that Nebuchadnezzar is having, right? So let's go back. It says, and it said, which shall bear rule over all the earth. Now, the Greek Empire, okay, did not literally bear rule over the entire world, all right, but they had bore rule over the known world at the time, okay. They didn't rule over here in the Americas back then. They ruled, the known world, at the time. Go look up that term, known world. All right, that's what they ruled. All right, so let me go back up here. Daniel 2 and 30, it's like in verse 40 now says, and the fourth king, it's like in the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron. For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And this kingdom is talking about the ancient Roman Empire. All right, and it says iron because of its military might. All right, because what? After the Roman Empire, it's like after the Greek Empire came who? So what empire came after the Greek Empire? The Roman Empire came after the Greek Empire, absorbing Greek territories and Hellenistic kingdoms into its own rule starting in the 2nd century BC. While Alexander the Great's empire was succeeded by several smaller Hellenistic kingdoms, they were eventually absorbed into the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire. So after the Greek Empire came who? The Roman Empire. Okay, those are that's the iron, right? That's the iron part of the statue, the iron legs that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. Okay, all these different Caesars, these different ruled emperors of the ancient Roman Empire, right? From 168 BC to 476 AD. All right, also known as the dragon. And it said back in the scriptures, okay, it said, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise, because it took, talking about the territories that had taken over, right? Now, to this, verse 41 says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Okay, so this says the feet and toes. Now understand something. How many toes does a person have? 10, right? Now, what these toes are talking about, all right, is talking about the European Union, the EU. Okay, and this is the kingdom, so to speak, right, that we're living in today. All right, now it's not, let me just say it's a bunch of countries, predominantly Edomite countries put together, all right, as one, operating as one, supposedly, or a bunch of Edomite countries, all right, as one body, all right, under the EU. All right, EU is short for European Union. Okay, as I said, the 10 toes. Okay, first off, the EU wasn't always called the EU. It says before becoming the European Union, or EU, in 1993, the predecessor was the European Economic Community, which was established in 1958. So before it was called the EU, it was called the European Economic Community, or EEC for short. Okay, now with this, okay, by the time it was called the EU, it had 10 members. Okay, now look, when you look at this flag, this is the EU flag here. When you look at it, okay, I believe it's 12 stars, but really it should be 10. Okay, but these go into the founding nations of the EU. All right. So, and there, they got the history on it called enlargements. All right, just want to get real quick. So, at the beginning, all right, March 25th, 1957, it says founding members: Belgium, 1, France, 2, Germany, 3, Italy, 4, Luxembourg, 5, the Netherlands, 6. It says signed the Treaty of Rome. This establishes the European Economic Community, which would eventually become the EU we know today. So, and when it started out is what? 6 members, okay? Now, they had what's known as enlargement. So the first enlargement happened on January 1st, 1973. Denmark, Ireland, and the UK joined the EEC, raising the number of member states to 9. So they say, they'll say 9, okay, but really, the Ireland and the UK are the same. Okay, you count it as one due to its history. All right. So really, you know, you have what, 8 here. Okay, the second enlargement. It says membership of the EEC reaches double figures when Greece joins. So Greece joins in. So that's 9. Okay, that's really 9. Then it says the third enlargement, January 1st, 1986. Spain and Portugal join the EEC. The number of member states is now 12, but Spain and Portugal also counts as one, right? And the UK and Ireland count as one. So really 10, okay? Really 10. And these, all right, this was prophesied all to happen all the way back during the time of Daniel, okay? With the prophecy, all right? And, you know, that would be about this. So this was already prophesied to happen, and we're living in this today. Okay, we're living in this today. And by the time they got to, you know, the 10 members, all right, because now it started off as 10, but now it's a whole bunch. If you look at it today, it's a whole bunch of other nations added to it, but it started off with really 10. Okay, but this was prophesied to happen as we're reading here. All right, we're living in this today. Okay. So it says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Right now, clay and iron, right? Clay is weak and iron is strong, right? It says all right. So the thing is, these EU nations, all right, some of the EU countries, all right, or nations are financially, just like how clay is weak, some of the EU or European Union nations, all right, are financially and militarily weak, right? And as iron is strong, some of the EU nations, iron countries, are financially and militarily strong. Remember, the EU is a bunch of countries and nations, you know, basically so-called coming together. But as it says, the kingdom shall be divided. So they're going to have divisions among them. You know, even though they, you know, are all together a part of one body, you know, they don't see eye to eye all the time. Okay? It says, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Okay? And actually, let me just go to my because I don't want to say the wrong thing. All right, because I recently went through this, so I'm just going here to, you know, double check the note I got for it. Daniel 2. And for that part, but there shall be in it, in the mark, so in this kingdom, it will be partly strong and weak. It will be partly strong and weak financially and militarily, and there will be divisions in it. Yeah, one of the divisions that happened a couple years ago was Brexit. Okay, Britain exited the EU. Just, like I said, because I get rid of these. Slovakia. You know, I'm not doing it like I, you know, normally do the these type of lessons on, like, you know, slides or whatever. Okay. You know, because it'll take too long to prepare and everything. But Brexit here, all right, it says the UK's withdrawal from the European Union. That was part of prophecy coming to pass. See? So, so we're living in this kingdom now. And let's see, when did it happen? It says Brexit was the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union. Brexit took place, I'm going to just say January 31st of 2020. You know, so we're living in this kingdom now. Okay. This goes right into prophecy with this here. All right, but we're living in this kingdom now. So let's continue reading. Verse 42, it says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. All right, once again, some of the EU or European Union countries are financially weak, right? As clay is weak, okay? And some of the EU or European Union countries are financially and militarily strong, as iron is strong. So some of them are financially and militarily weak and financially and militarily strong. just like how clay is weak and iron is strong, all right? Verse 43, and whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Now, I'm going to read the note I got here for that, all right? So it says, this kingdom would have a mixture of heathen nations in it, but primarily the Edomites. The seed of men are the other heathen nations, because Esau is a heathen, but the seed of men being the other heathen nations. It says, although they mingle themselves with the other heathen nations, those alliances will fall apart, just like how iron and clay don't mix, because you are not able to mix iron and clay. So there's going to be divisions and all types of stuff within this last kingdom, okay? And, yeah, so we're living in this time now, and this is once again, the iron and clay that Daniel saw. Okay, so divided kingdoms headed by revived Roman Empire, America, all right? And the thing is, throughout the Bible, right, in different places, let me say in different places in the Bible, right, it talks about, 10 horns, okay? Like in Revelation 17, it talks about the 10 horns. It's still talking about the EU, okay? In Daniel, the 7th chapter, all right, it says, I believe 10 horns, but that's talking about the ancient 10 horns of the Roman Empire. But brothers have done lessons on that, all right? So you can just look that up, okay? But the EU is also spoken about, like chapters like Revelation 17, okay? And in this chapter, right, so in the middle of this, right, so this is the iron and clay, the feet, okay, the toes. Now, when we go back up here, verse 34, because the statue wasn't all that Nebuchadnezzar saw happen in his dream. It's as it says, verse 34, thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, and this stone represents Yahweh Shai, all right, chief cornerstone. This is let's get this. Come on, man. All right, let's type it here. It's Lakia. This is the book of First. Let me get this. So actually, hold on. Salakia. Book of 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 7. It says, unto you, therefore, which believe unto you, therefore, which believe he is precious, talking about Yahweh Shai, but unto them which be disobedient, the stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner. Okay. Let me get this one. It says, Isaiah 28:16, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste. So Yahweh Shai is this cornerstone, or this stone that we're seeing here in Daniel, the 2nd chapter. Okay, he's that stone, and it says, thou sawest that till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet. So, in the time that this last, ruler is here, which, and as I said, it's mentioned in other chapters, right, of the European Union, right, but it's also mentioned, with NATO, EU, okay, which NATO stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, all right, and the EU, once again, being the European Union. That's the beast, all right, in America, all right, is, you could say spearheads it, okay. America, NATO, and the EU is mentioned in the Bible as well. All right. But you can read that about there. So this is the time that we're living in, okay, when these, nations are here. Okay. So Yahushua is going to come back in this time that this last, kingdom, so to speak, is ruling. Verse 35, it says, Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and mountain means government. Okay? Sometimes when you read in the Bible, right, mountain means government. Right? It's like you have these, if you know about them, these different nations have what's called a G7 summit meeting. Let me just look up the term mountain real quick. It's not showing you that it's not just like a landmass or anything like that. Mountain, it says a large natural elevation. All right, so that's obvious. All right, but then also, where is it? Sort up here. Okay, because look, what is the top of a mountain called? The top of a mountain is called a summit. Okay, summit. It says the highest point of a hill or mountain. It says a meeting between heads of government. All right, so a mountain, sometimes in the Bible, when you read, it's talking about a government. All right, so when Yahushua comes back, right, he's going to bring the kingdom of heaven, which is also called the throne of David, which is going to be a righteous rulership. All right, it's going to govern the world in righteousness. All right, it says and filled the whole earth. It's going to be, Yahushua is going to rule the entire world in righteousness. All right, but let me jump down. So going to that, verse 44 now. So after this, so he's going to come back in the time of, as it says, verse 44, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. See, so while this kingdom is here, NATO, EU, America, okay, and current standing kings of the world and everything, says in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. So Yahushua is going to come back in these times we're living in now, right? He's going to set up his kingdom. It says which shall never be destroyed. And you could read precepts in Daniel the 7th chapter about this in other various places, right? It says, so the kingdom that he's coming with, the rulership that he's going to bring, the throne, which is the throne of David, is never going to be destroyed. It's always going to last. Nobody's going to take it down. It's always going to last. And that kingdom is only for the Israelites. That kingdom, the throne of David, is what we call the kingdom of heaven. All right? That is what the kingdom of heaven is, the throne of David. All right? That Yahushua is going to bring on the earth. Okay? It says, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Now let me get a precept to this. Is the book of Luke, chapter 1. Right? Starting now, let me see, verse 30. It says, and the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with Yahweh. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, meaning you become pregnant, and bring forth a son, right? So we give birth to a son. It says, and shalt call his name Yahushua. So the angel was telling her, when you have a son, you're going to get pregnant, you're going to have a son, and you're to call his name Yahushua. And in Matthew 1 and 21, it tells you what his name means. Okay? But Yah means he, and Yahushua means save or deliver. So Yahushua's name means he is the savior, or he is the deliverer. And again, in Matthew 1 and 21, it tells you why he's named that. But continuing on, verse 32, it says, he shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord Yahweh shall give unto him the throne of his father David. See? So Yahushua is going to be, when he returns, he's going to bring the throne of David, okay, which is the kingdom of heaven. Verse 33, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. And this is the kingdom that we're waiting on, okay? We're no longer going to be oppressed. We're no longer going to be, sinful. We're no longer gonna have the curses on us. All of these things, all right, on us Israelites. You know, we're no longer gonna have, to go through hell anymore. All right, the kingdom of heaven is for the Israelites, but it's gonna be on earth. And as it said back in Daniel the second chapter, right, Daniel 2, it says and filled the whole earth. It's going to be a worldwide. Yahushua is going to rule the entire world in righteousness. Real quick, let me get this. Psalms 72. Getting right to the point. Psalm 72 and 8. He shall have dominion also from sea to sea, and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Okay? So there we go. Now going back down, Daniel 2 and 45. Oh, let me read verse 44 again. It says, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Right? So Yahushua is going to come back. He's going to set up the throne of David, which is the kingdom of heaven. Right? And it's never going to be taken down. It says, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So when Yahushua comes back, he's going to take down, the current world governments and rulerships that's in the world. He's going to set up the kingdom of heaven, and it's going to, as it says, stand forever. Verse 45, for as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So everything we went through here is going to happen. Okay, we're living in the last kingdom before Yahushua returns. Okay, which is, the EU is involved, NATO is involved, all right, America, all right. But the 10 toes is specifically talking about the EU, the European Union, okay. And we're living in that time now, so Yahushua is coming back, man. And when he comes back, he's coming back to conquer, okay? He's going to set up the kingdom of heaven on earth, which is only for the Israelites. So with that, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushua, Bahashim, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, never well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect of Israel. Shalom to the elect.